Hello.
Hello!
Good
Welcome
morning.
back, episode 3. Today we are going to dive into a topic that I would say both of us have a lot of experience with, and something a lot of people can relate to, whether you have gone through a bodybuilding prep or whether you've just gone through like a fat loss phase for like lifestyle goals. But today's topic is going to be on food noise and how to navigate food noise, becoming hyper fixated on nutrition, especially post show or at the end of a dieting phase. I know this can be super sensitive and hard to navigate mentally for a lot of people. So, yeah, let's get into it.
Exciting stuff, exciting topic. Not exciting stuff, but exciting to learn about and find.
I'm excited to unpack it
Yeah,
because,
definitely.
yeah,
Yeah,
I would
so
say everybody experiences it to some
a hundred,
degree.
100%. And it's hell on earth when you are experiencing it, but when you find like the solutions and the tools to deal with it, it's like lesson learned. And then you have the tools for next time too, in case it comes up because
Totally.
nothing is indefinitely solved. You know what I mean? It can come back up.
Yeah. So,
So the
what is
first,
food noise?
yeah,
Let's just unpack that first of all. What is food noise?
yeah.
Because, yeah, it's not just normal hunger.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's not normal
So
hunger.
we'll start off with food noise as for anybody, and then we'll also go into food noise for somebody who just came off of prep as well, because it does differentiate to a certain extent because one person came from a state of basically starvation and the other person could have if eating disorders are at play here or just having food noise as a daily problem for them. So for the general population who suffer with food noise, it's going to typically look like constantly thinking about food, intrusive thoughts about food. We'll even say once you don't even think about it sometimes when you're eating breakfast, let's say, what am I going to eat for lunch? You know what I mean? Or dinner. And it's just like
You're
constant
eating a
thought
meal and already thinking about
the
your
next one.
next meal.
And it's just, that's
Yeah.
obviously, I don't want to say not normal, but that's not how it should be for your day to day life because it is stressful and it does get to you and causes overeating or over
It's all
restricting
consuming
food.
when you can't focus
Very.
on anything else except for
Exactly.
food. And, the constant calorie math is running in the
Mhm.
back of your head.
Yeah.
You
And then we
can't
have,
look at a plate of food or think about any food without also thinking about how many calories and how many carbs and how much fat and protein
like,
is in
it's like
that
a
meal.
circle, right? And it never
It's a
stops.
constant,
It
it's a,
never.
yeah, it's nonstop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's the post show food noise, which can look like you just came from months of restricting because you're following a meal plan. Even if you have macros, you usually stick to a certain food group with those macros so that you react the same way every day to the food that you're consuming. So when you come off of that, it can look like now you have freedom per se. You're not in prep anymore. And so your hunger is going to be all over the place, your hunger cues, everything. And so when your food is rising up, you are constantly thinking about either that donut or, hey, how is that donut gonna fit into my macros or how is it gonna affect me? How much carbs in it, fats, whatever. And it's just constantly thinking about food as a whole. It doesn't have to be junk food, but just your body is not gonna feel full for quite some time. You know what I mean? So when you feel like a black hole, you're constantly thinking about what's gonna stop that feeling or stop that craving.
And to add on to that, going through a prolonged period of time when you've been restricting yourself from hyper palatable foods, from foods that you ordinarily would want to be eating on a daily basis or a weekly basis, you then have that heightened reward sensitivity, right? It's like this dopamine feedback loop that post show, once you start introducing these foods again, hyper palatable foods being like high sugar food, high fat foods, because obviously
Mm-hmm.
fats make food taste good. When you think about yummy foods, typically they're high in fat, butter, oil, it makes food taste good. So those hyper palatable foods then create this heightened reward sensitivity in the brain. It's like, give me more, give me more, give me more. And it's just, yeah, it's a constant circle, like we just mentioned. So,
It doesn't
yeah,
stop.
yeah. The other thing I do want to clarify and preface is that food noise isn't weakness. So if you're struggling with food noise, know that it is a normal reaction and it's not a sign of weakness. It's honestly like a very predictable response after going through a dieting phase, whether that be a prep or just a lifestyle cut. It is normal to experience food noise to some degree after prolonged restriction. So you're not alone.
Exactly, because more people than you know do go through it, and there are people also who don't face that, you know what I mean? And that's amazing, but you are not less than because you are feeling this or you're going through it, because it does take a toll in every aspect of your life. Because, when I experienced it, I would wake up, I'd have to go to work, but the whole time I'm just thinking about like, oh my gosh, I'm starving, I need to eat, but you're in reality you're not starving, you are eating, but your body's in that starvation mode constantly. And so it's like, again, if you're not eating constantly, you're not going to feel full, but then even if you feel full, you're not going to feel full for too much longer, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So you want to take us through like, why this might be happening and how it happens?
Yeah. And then I would say that there's also the opposite end of the spectrum where you're hyperfixated on the restriction and you don't allow yourself to go off plan whatsoever. You're honestly like super freaking anal about hitting your macros like bang on, or hitting your meal plan bang on, and yeah, not allowing yourself any kind of freedom or flexibility there after the dieting phase is done. Like I remember even for myself a couple off seasons ago, or maybe my first off season, like even though I wasn't in prep anymore and I didn't, so my lifestyle didn't require the same rigidity, is that a word, rigidity? Like same discipline
Rigid.
with staying on a meal plan as it does in prep, I would not allow myself anything off plan. Like I think I had a weekly free meal, untracked meal, like programmed, like coach said I could have a weekly off plan meal, but other than that, I would not let myself stray from my macros at all. Everything had to be bang on to a T, and ultimately that just led to burnout. And so I think that it's really important to find that balance of like allowing yourself a little bit of freedom and flexibility and enjoying life, but also not going too deep off the other end where you're just like in this spiral from
Exactly.
the food noise. So
Yeah, because there is a middle ground. It is hard to find, especially if it's your first time or even like your fifth, sixth time. Like, you know what I mean? We do learn from our mistakes, but at the same time, like we can't control what might happen post show because you literally never know, right? But I think it was this past year, honestly, like every year there is a certain topic that comes up in bodybuilding, and like in 2025, I don't think you like noticed it, or you might have. It was reversing was a really big thing, and like after every season
I
like
would say it still is.
really, yeah. So like it would like during the summertime of 25 was when like this was popping up for me, and it was during when I was still in prep. So I was like when I was consuming the media of follow your reverse to a T, which you should to a certain extent because you're so sensitive post show. If you do go off the rails or if you do too much, your body is going to start like for example, if you overeat and just keep binging and binging for a week or two, you might come to the point where you're suffering from edema. You know what I mean? So your body's so sensitive to sodium, to all that, that you do need to be careful for health reasons too. But at the same time, the propaganda of if you're not following your meal plan to a T, like to the gram, and some even don't take free meals, it doesn't make you better than another competitor. And if you're 1 pound up from stage weight for 4 weeks, it doesn't mean, and then the next person is five, it does not mean that one person did it right and the other did it wrong, or vice versa.
No. Everyone's post-show reverse diet phase is going to look different,
Yeah.
and this truly comes down to each individual, right? Nobody has the same metabolism. Nobody's bodies respond the same way to different foods and different food intake. So, yeah, but it is like it is a really juicy topic because we find ourselves in this constant state of comparison too, in prep, out of prep, and honestly, I'm here just to cancel sharing how many pounds up from stage weight we are because even depending on your body composition, your height, your weight, your size in general, like the amount of muscle you have on you is gonna impact how much food you're able to consume.
Exactly.
Like for me in particular, I have the thyroid of a 16-year-old boy. It is kind of crazy. So I'm able to eat a lot of food, and post show, I maintained stage leanness for about 2 months. Like it was pretty crazy, to be honest. I had to eat a lot of food to gain weight, and that was just due to the state my thyroid was in at the time. But then for other people, it's perfectly normal to gain, 5 pounds right off the hop. So yeah, I don't think it's fair to compare yourself to anybody else. It really differs person to person.
Yeah, and I was gonna actually bring that up because you finished your season how long before me was it?
I competed mid-August was my
Okay.
last show.
Okay, so I finished in October. So yeah, when I was done, Bella was still looking lean. Like I'm talking peeled, okay? But then I came off and I'm somebody that puts on weight quickly. You know what I mean? So we did have to still be careful, and I did still have to follow my plan. But if you look at me and her side by side, you could say she looks like she came off stage 2 weeks ago. You know what I mean? And I look like I'm in midway through my whole reverse. You know what I mean? So it's if you look
Yeah.
at that and you're like, you can judge off of that and say she did it right and she did it, you know what I mean? And there's so many cases of that, like where somebody will just gain body fat quicker, but that doesn't mean that you didn't reverse. Or, you know what, like you just wasted this because our reverse is the perfect time to put on quality tissue, dense tissue. So it might look like the other person is not taking that advantage, but I would beg to differ. You know what I mean? But it's gonna take us for an example. There are, people who react differently to food and how much they will consume because she can be at 400 carb, no issue. I can't do that quickly. You know what I mean? It has to be gradual, but it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you're worse off because your food is not at 3,400. Like sometimes we just cannot consume that much and stay at a
No, totally.
normal, I don't say normal, like, yeah, who cares? Normal body fat
Yeah.
percentage for a reverse.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
and it's really depends, like, what did your prep look like too, you know? What were your peaking protocols? How much food were you eating going into your show? Because if if you're peaking off 3,000 calories, then of course your body's going to be in a better set point to continue eating high amounts
Exactly.
of food immediately post show. But if you're somebody who doesn't need a lot of food to peak, you can take the two of us as an example too. I need a lot of food to fully peak and hit peak fullness, but correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you needed to eat as much food going into your show. So, yeah, of course, my body's going to be a little bit more primed to eat that high amount of food coming out of show versus somebody who doesn't. So,
Exactly.
there's so many different variables and factors, so it's really not fair to compare yourself to
Exactly.
anybody else, right? And it truly depends how metabolically adapted your body is as well throughout
Hmm.
your prep. If you're having constant refeeds throughout your prep, that's going to help mitigate the metabolic adaptation. But if you don't, if you're truly low calorie and low carb throughout your whole prep, then your body's going to be pretty adapted. So, you have a deeper hole to dig yourself out of post show. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, truly depends. And yeah, it's not just like a quote unquote, you have a slower metabolism. There's so many variables that go into it. How much
Yeah.
cardio were you doing as well as a big factor.
Oh, don't mention the cardio, guys. I literally can't even like I look back at it and I'm like the amount of cardio I was doing, and that's like a topic for another time, like when it
Mhm.
comes to like individuals and preps, but like there'll be a girl who needs 35, maybe 45 few times a week. No, girl, I was on that shit for 6 days a week going at it, okay? And I'm talking fasted and post workout, okay? So, yeah, like when you come
Yeah,
off of that, it's gonna obviously be like a shock to your body, right? So, there's less
yeah,
expenditure and
yeah. We can
food.
dive into our preps and what our protocols look like on prep in a different episode. But yeah, like for me, I had higher cardio at the start of my prep, but then by the end of my prep, like barely any cardio at all. So yeah, yeah,
But yeah, no,
crazy how prep can look so different for
oh yeah,
everyone as well.
yeah. Like
Yeah,
we gotta sometimes dig, you know.
you gotta dig. I would say everybody has to dig to a certain point. You
It's
know,
traumatic actually if
probably
you think
a
about
point
it.
in prep too where like it just it becomes hard. Like, you know, you feel so good for like the first half of your prep a lot of the time. And you're like, oh, this is the easiest prep I've ever had, and then
It
there's
hits you,
a
and
point
you're
where
like,
like
oh.
the light switch just flips.
The light actually turns off, and there's like nothing up there. Like that point, like 2 weeks out, there's nothing up there, girl.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, there's also with, food being involved post show or just when you come from a food deprived state, a lot of things are going to be affecting the food noise as well. Hormones, you know what I mean? That's a really big one. When you're crash dieting or, if you're even binge eating, your hormones are always going to be affected if there's not that piece for your body to consume and also not over exercise. That's also a problem, right? So if you're, let's say, like, if I'm waking up and going for sprints, even jogs, multiple times a week, long periods of times, I'm going to be starving. I'm going to be hungry. You know what I mean? So,
Of course, more energy expenditure is going to drive hunger up. So yeah. And then as well, when you're in this extreme dieting phase, we see thyroid function decrease, your T3 decreases over time, and the body becomes at better at saving energy, right?
mhm,
Because like I don't really love the term like quote unquote like starvation mode, but your body becomes better at
mhm.
utilizing energy over time when you're in this dieting phase. So it really kind of fights back. It works against you because you're trying to burn more body fat, but the body becomes better at at
Exactly.
holding on to body fat. So, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Basically, like your energy or your exercise efficiency goes up. Like you burn fewer calories doing the same amount of work,
Hmm.
whether this be like through direct cardio or even just neat, like the amount of calories you burn in a day just doing like activities of daily living, your body becomes more energy efficient on purpose, which actually works against us in prep. But
Exactly.
yeah, and then yeah, the other thing to touch on, I guess, when it comes to hormones is your leptin and your ghrelin. So your hunger hormones are completely out of whack at the end of a prep. Your ghrelin obviously is through the roof, being your hunger hormone, and then leptin is the hormone which makes you feel full and satiated when you eat. And because it's so dysregulated, you can eat and eat and eat without feeling
Feeling
full.
full.
So it
That's the
takes a
black hole
while.
syndrome.
Yeah, it takes a while for those hunger hormones to stabilize again and for you to actually, finish eating a meal and be like, okay, yes, I am full versus like just wanting more and more and more.
Yeah. And like a way to also like focus on that portion because again it is draining always feeling hungry, like you know what I mean? Because nothing's gonna make you feel full is think of a child, okay? A newborn's feeding times are very important. You know what I mean? Then after adapting to that, they know when they're gonna be hungry and you kind of also know when they're gonna be hungry. Setting times for when you will have meals, even if in those periods you're gonna feel like you're starving, you need to understand that if you set those times for yourselves, your body's gonna respond to that. It's a
That is a really
mental
good
thing,
point. Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
like I had a timer going off for every 3 hours, two and a half, you know what I mean? Where I would know, hey, meal one, meal two. And some might say, just eat, like, at those times. No, like, you need to train your body and your mind because that's also the only way it will happen for you to regulate it for when, you kind of have to train
You
yourself. It
thrived
sounds
off
so,
that structure and
yeah.
prep when you're eating every 2 to 3 hours, a
Mhm.
very specific meal time. So keep that structure going
Exactly.
post
It
prep.
works.
It's gonna
It
set you
works.
up for success. Yeah. I know you mentioned a baby, but I joke about eating like a dog, like literally like on a timer. Your dog knows exactly what time breakfast and dinner is at.
Exactly.
And your dog will be waiting by its food bowl, like coming up to you in the
Yeah.
kitchen when it's mealtime. So yeah, I
Yeah,
feel
and
like
you'll
we act in accordance with that very similarly. Like when it's mealtime, our bodies know, like, okay, time
Conditioning.
for meal two, time for meal three, like every like
Exactly.
hour and a half to 2 hours, like on the clock.
Yeah, like I'm so conditioned to this point. Like
Yeah,
I'm in my off season and like I know if I don't take a meal with me, if I'm gonna go out for long periods of times, my body thinks I'm about to die. You know what I
same.
mean? And it's so embarrassing when I just like my mood switches and people are like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "I didn't eat yet." I look crazy. You know what I mean? But the
Yeah,
thing is, it
we're
helps
just
and
so
it works.
conditioned at this point.
Exactly.
Especially post workout, like
Oh,
after lifting as heavy and with as much intensity as we
yeah.
do, if we don't get a meal in us, at least I'm speaking for myself actually, but
It's
if I don't get a meal in me within that hour, like brain not functioning, like
I'm
emotions
angry.
dysregulated,
I'm
like
angry.
yeah,
Yeah,
fully, fully,
exactly.
yeah.
What's it called? Yeah, so those two are a really big thing. And also, like, that's why we also recommend post show, even during or like in general, people regular, yeah, like people who don't compete, you know what I mean, need to always be on top of, to watch out for these. Like, how will you know, like, your hormones are out of whack or your T3, your T4, like, whatever? Get your blood work done, right? When I know that when you live in the States, it's not free, right? You have to pay for it to get your blood work checked.
Yeah, I think so.
That's
In
so
Canada, you can get a lot of testing done for
hmm
free, but
There's
I
like
know there
specific
may be
like
some blood
niche
tests you do have to pay
ones.
for.
Yeah,
What?
but they're very like they're the ones you have to pay for here are very like niche and specific. I feel like the general like where it will tell you like whatever you need to know. It's gonna be free and honestly take advantage of that because there are people who do pay hundreds and hundreds to get that checked and it will be the best indicator to know what's going on inside because on the outside you might look perfectly fine, but your insides might be screaming and you don't know it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
I
As a
will
woman,
say give yourself like a bit of a grace period between finishing your prep and getting your blood work done just to give your body a little bit of time for those
yeah.
fuckers,
What
for
it
their
like
for those hormones to stabilize and regulate because obviously post show they
yeah.
are going to be a little bit chaotic.
Yeah, yeah. I did mine, I think 8 weeks, seven
8 weeks
weeks,
is
8 weeks
normally a
post
pretty good
show.
benchmark. Yeah, get your
Yeah,
full
because
sex hormone panel,
yeah,
thyroid panel,
everything.
cortisol,
Free
glucose.
tests,
Like, yeah,
everything. Like it's as a woman, I think that's really important because your menstrual
iron.
cycle is also at play here. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So that would be a good one and definitely a topic for next time on that and like blood work specifically. But once you give that gap for yourself, especially if you're on PEDs as well, it needs to clear out of your system. And then you want to see the clear picture if, things have settled or if there are things out of whack, either from drug use, either from, just hormones, acting up, it will show after those few weeks. Because if it is right post show, everything's going to be elevated, everywhere skewed, so don't even bother.
Yeah, because your stress is just like through the roof post
Yeah,
show. Like even if
do
you
you
feel
get
great,
sick?
you're like, oh my God, I feel so good. I'm
Mhm.
eating again, but internally, like there is so
I
much
definitely make the case. Do you get sick post show at all? Do you like realize that like pattern or no?
I've heard of this being a common trend, but
Yeah,
personally, I haven't. I also
it's
did
hell.
finish my prep like in the summer,
Mm.
mid-August. So,
Yeah,
vibes are high, like sickness is typically down around that time of year.
yeah.
But I have heard of that happening because, yeah, the body's just like so stressed out and
It's so insane. And it's like not even like a cold or anything. Like you just suffer from something
you
every
hit a
time
wall.
post show. I've gotten sick and it's like you're not gonna be in the gym, you're not gonna be walking, you're gonna be bedridden. You know what I mean? And you're just so exhausted and just your body is just burnt out, you know what I mean? And once you start feeling that, it's not good. It's not
Yeah,
good.
I wonder if that comes down to like also losing like, the dopamine, not having like the dopamine rush from constantly
Mm,
checking in, like, and like we touched on in our first episode, like having that like goal and countdown,
mhm.
you go from like 6 weeks out, like 4 weeks out, 2 weeks out, oh my gosh, peak week, dopamine is crazy in peak week, and then the show's done and you're like, okay, what do I do with
You
myself now?
must I
And
think you're onto
you're battling the
something.
food noise at the same time too.
Yeah, I think you're onto something because I said like it's not a cold or it's not like an actual sickness usually. So I think that has to be it. I think, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But
And then Yeah, I would say that there's like a lot of anxiety post-show as well because you're not only trying to navigate, redirecting your focus in training and in life in general, but also anxiety about body fat levels returning to normal, anxiety about navigating food. And that's
Exactly.
when we start to see this hyperfixation on
Exactly.
food.
Always understand as well when you're we need to understand that when we're going through a reverse, it's for a reason, right? Whether it be you're experiencing hunger cues, everything, it's better to deal with it on the spot because if you see yourself, because there's two sides where you either go into this binge cycle or it could be a binge and restrict or just restrict fully and you want to keep that stage lean look. We need to understand that stage lean is not a spot where you need to be at year round or even too long post show. You know what I mean? It's not a neutral state by any means. Your body is going to be wanting food. The more you restrict it, you might be actually getting leaner too afterwards. Like you never know. But you're gonna be stopping from having insane amount of growth, upping your food. Because to stay that lean, I'm so sorry, for much longer, your body's not gonna want more food. And the second that you do add food, you're going to be either exploding, something's going to go wrong, and it's just not something that we should be keeping. Like I know girls in the past who have obviously um, dealt with their relationship with food and just body image, which is really good to see, but they also went through a point where they just wanted to keep that stage lean look for longer. You know what I mean? Because you do like look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, this looks good. Like this look, I worked so hard for it. And after 20, 24, 21 weeks of dieting, you're losing that in a few weeks. Like in like not even a quarter. You know what I mean? So it is hard to look at, but at the same time, if you stay in that state for too long, you're doing yourself a disservice and possibly harming yourself to the point of not prepping again in the future. You just never know.
Yeah, and something that I focus on post show that really helps me stick to my reverse and not go off the walls with food is utilizing that extra insulin sensitivity to put on muscle mass, right? Like coming out of a dieting phase, the body is extremely insulin sensitive, meaning it's a very optimal time to pack on muscle tissue and very optimal time for muscle growth because you are so insulin sensitive. So the body's really going to utilize the carbohydrates and the glucose in your body for muscle growth rather than storing it as body fat. So that's something I remind myself of is if I stick to my reverse, my body is really going to utilize this food for muscle growth versus if you absolutely botch your reverse and, gain weight too quickly, then you're missing out on that period of time when your body's super insulin sensitive to pack on muscle tissue. So that's just like a little motivating factor that I remind myself of that really helps me stay disciplined post show is like, hey, I've worked so hard to get my body into this insulin sensitive state that I want to make the most of the post show period to pack on as much tissue as possible because yeah, the more body fat you have on you, typically the less insulin sensitive you're going to be. So it's important
Exactly.
to stick to your reverse and stay disciplined with that in order to maintain insulin sensitivity for as long as possible.
Yeah, like the where I saw like that was my biggest thing for this season compared to last was you want to use that prime time properly and quickly. You know what I mean? Because my first season ever, it was my first show and I knew shit all, okay? And I gained 30 pounds very quickly, like in the matter of a month, you know what I mean? And then prepping after that was way harder than it needed to be. One, two, I made growth, yes, but it could have been better, you know what I mean? And so I was like, if I use my time properly now, imagine how much more growth I could be making later on. And that snapped me into shape pretty quickly.
For
Pretty
sure.
quickly, right?
Yeah, no kidding, because luckily I have always been able to manage my reverses pretty well. Like I've never gone through the experience of rapidly gaining like 20, 30 pounds post show. And I'm grateful for like having had the support to help me navigate my reverses well. But if you do end up botching your reverse and gaining too much weight too quickly, then yeah, like you said, you just end up having to go and diet it off again so that you're in a prime position again to be able to build muscle, right? So it like
Which
just throws
sucks.
off your whole timeline of your off season, and you end up having to diet again way sooner than what is ideal. Like coming out of a prep,
Exactly.
the last thing you want to do is go hop on the stairs again and like
It's oh
eat
yeah,
like
you
a bird
never want
again.
yeah.
So yeah, yeah,
But yeah, I think those were really good, motivating factors that to look at post show. Not everything is supposed to be in a negative light. And even if you do, again, like Bella said, even if you do botch your reverse, my biggest advice, honestly, coming from somebody that did that, never, because I know some people's brains will go right away to let's burn this off right now. You know what I mean? Let's also like just kind of start from a clean slate. That might do more harm than good. If you are, let's say, a month after you've gained 30 pounds, do not, and I say, I can't stress this enough, do not go the next month and say, we have to take off 20 pounds now. So I can only be 10 pounds up. You're going to suffer so much from burnout because you just spent 20 goddamn weeks doing cardio. You do not want to do that again. And so, what I think is the best case is getting back on plan, cleaning up your diet, not having free meals as often as needed, and picking foods that you enjoy. And your coach should 110% be on top of that because I know some coaches fuck off right after a prep and aren't helpful, which is insane to me because you could
absolutely insane.
ruin.
I would say arguably like post show, your reverse diet phase is more important than prep
Yeah,
itself for your physical and your mental health.
yeah.
So
It shouldn't be
yeah,
harder than
please,
prep.
for the
It
love of
should be
God, do not leave your coach right after a show.
please
And if your coach leaves you, then red flag, never work with them again.
blacklist them. Blacklist them at that point because that's evil.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? So
yeah, yeah. And
that's
yeah, like being regulated post show is so important because food noise is food noise in itself is perfectly normal. Like we mentioned, it's not an eating disorder, but when you become super, super obsessed, it can lead into disordered eating. And lots of, if you're like wondering whether you are experiencing that or not, some red flags that I remind myself of is, okay, am I like going through like a binge and restrict cycle where I'm eating a ton of food and then restricting my calories afterwards, to try to compensate? Am I finding myself withdrawing myself from social situations because I'm afraid or unsure on how to navigate the food aspect of that situation? Do I get anxiety around untracked meals, whether that being allowing myself to enjoy the meal or having anxiety about if and when I'm going to be able to stop myself from eating and not overdo it? And then something else I will say that I fully am guilty of is doing so much cardio to burn off food. And this happens to me post show time and time again. I will fully admit it. I experience some binging episodes myself. I do. They've never been super extreme, but I've had nights where I'm in the pantry, in the kitchen, I'm like, okay, what next, what next, what next? And I cannot stop myself from eating. Even though I know I'm not hungry, it comes down to my hunger hormones being off and I don't actually feel that sensation of being full. So I just keep eating and eating and eating. And then the next morning I wake up, feel like absolute garbage. And I'm like, okay, let's go hop on the elliptical for an hour and, burn off like 400 to 500 calories that I ate the night before. And that's when it starts to become a little bit disordered. Like, you're eating and then you feel the compulsive, obsessive need to go and burn off cardio and burn it off doing cardio and eat less after. So
yeah. That's a
I would
that's a
just, yeah,
really eye-opening thing for people because people refuse to discuss that side of it, and I think a lot of us are guilty of doing that, and it's not per se a bad thing. It's just something that we need to learn
yeah,
from, and it's not a healthy
exactly. It's
habit.
all a learning experience. And yeah, I think ultimately, like, it is important to like go through that and, be aware of it and recognize what is happening so that you can make smarter decisions.
Yeah.
Even now, like at this point in my off season, if I go a little bit off the walls with like a free meal or, eat more than what I would have liked to or more than what my macros allow for, I still sometimes find myself thinking about going and doing cardio after, and then I stop myself. I'm like, Bella, that is only leading to further intrusive thoughts when it comes to food. That is not healthy. Just because you ate a little bit of extra chocolate one night doesn't mean you need to go burn it off the next day. You know, how is this going to affect your body long term? One night of eating a little bit of extra chocolate is not going to do shit all. Like, that's not going to affect you long term. But you know what will affect you long term is continuing to overeat every single night and going through this cycle of overeating, doing cardio the next morning to burn it off, and just this repeat process. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, exactly. When you start doing that, it's just a slippery slope because your
It is.
brain is always, let's just eat because then tomorrow we're just gonna burn it off, and you just made yourself aware of a situation that could, um, you know, be helpful, but it's not, and then it's just again like a slippery slope, right?
Yeah.
We also have like the whole post show with, people reversing and people still being lean versus not. It comes down to a lot of external validation that social media brings, or people for that lean physique, because it is impressive. Like when you go outside and you see somebody who's sub 9-10% body fat, it's impressive. You know what I mean? You know that
Mhm.
they're working
Yeah.
hard, and you look at it because your eyes are drawn to it. Obviously for bodybuilders like who are in that body, it feels a little bit different. Like when I'm lean, I feel disgusted. Like that's my, like, I hate seeing the veins everywhere and like things like that, but it's still
See,
impressive,
I
right?
love it. I'm like, ab veins, that's sick.
Have you ever like woken up and you see yourself and you're like, what is that? Like, I used to get scared.
Yeah. You know what? I do look back on pictures now from
Mhm.
like peak prep, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I was so lean and I did not even realize it at the time. And like, it is a little bit gross how shredded I got because those ab veins are not normal. You're not supposed to be walking around with stains sticking out of your
Exactly.
stomach.
It's freaky. It's so freaky.
And it is freaky, and I like that personally. I think it's really cool and
Mhm.
fascinating to see like what the body is capable of.
Mhm.
But I also know that like that is not normal.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's when it also can like get a little bit complicated in the brain because, even right now I'm like, oh, it would be sick to have ab veins, but at the same time, the other half of my brain is telling me, no, Ella,
Yeah.
that's not normal. Like you
It's,
are
it's
healthy now at
impressive.
a healthy body fat percentage.
Yeah, but it's just impressive because you're wearing your hard work,
And
right?
yeah, and in turn, you do get external validation
Oh,
because
100%.
it's not normal to be walking around with ab veins. So
Mhm.
yeah, people are, gonna hype you up, and that's gonna get a lot more attention versus just walking around looking like a quote unquote normal person.
Yeah, exactly. There's two
Yeah.
different reactions to two different things. People are still gonna notice that you are more built than the average person, even if you're in your off season, but the lean look will always get more attention when you post it rather than the look with normal amounts of body fat. Not
Yeah.
not even too much. And even if it's too much, who cares? But it's obviously gonna defer in reaction, and that causes people to tie their identity to being, and that is going to again just affect your mental health so poorly, because once you tie your identity to anything, whether it be lean, being, fluffier, like whatever the case is, even tying your identity to bodybuilding, it is just going to end horribly,
Hmm.
because you're not, at the end of the day, you bodybuilders obviously live and breathe the lifestyle 24/7, but you need to have things that make you feel whole and happy outside of it, because you're not gonna have, you're not gonna have friends who always bodybuild. And so if you're gonna go hang out with your friends and you're just gonna sit there and feel like, wow, like I don't really have anything to talk about, it is gonna cause you to separate yourself from people that genuinely do care and love you and enjoy your presence, but don't put yourself in this little bubble that's obviously gonna later on.
Bodybuilding is not your entire life,
It's not.
nor should it be. Like, no matter what level of bodybuilding you are competing at,
Mhm,
whether you're just an amateur, pro,
mhm.
Olympian, there's always more to life than bodybuilding. So it is important to
Yeah.
pour into that and give yourself the balance because
Yeah.
bodybuilding's not going to be a part of your life forever. Everybody's going to retire
Yeah.
from the sport at some point in their life.
And everybody knows the best of the best are the way they are because they know when to pull back and when to not. There
Yeah.
is a time and place, and that's the reason that they're as successful as they are, is because you don't see Miss
Look at top
Olympia.
Olympians
Yeah,
and
they're not
top
lean
in the
year
industry,
round.
even in their off seasons, they're enjoying themselves.
Yeah,
That
they're
was
not,
something that
you
flipped the
know.
script for me was like looking at people like Laura Lee is a really, really good example. Like three-time Arnold champion, like Miss Olympia, like in her off season, she's not tracking every single like gram of food. She is allowing herself free meals. She's allowing herself to go out into social situations and not be 100% like on plan all the time, and look at how she's performing in
Exactly.
bodybuilding. So, yeah, I think she's a really good example. And yeah,
Yeah.
that's something that I have recently also incorporated in my life, into my off season. Like bodybuilding is not everything. That's something that I had to work through mentally. And my coach and I did a lot of work on that because I was like so obsessed with it for so long. But yeah, I guess that also comes down to learning how to incorporate a good level of balance into your life, which is also what we talked about last episode. Yeah.
Yeah, because when you see, obviously for 20 weeks you see the scale drop, you see, because when you send your check-ins, you're like, hey, this week just dropped 2 pounds, and it's like perfect, right on track, right? So you're not getting that when you're off. So you obviously like want to um, keep that thing going where you're just getting validated every single day. And when the lights go off, there's no stage, there's no heels, makeup, then it's like I don't know what to do with myself because I'm now in this gap where I have to sit still, do the work so I can be back up there. And so if you're just gonna dilly dally for the 8 months, 9 months, a year, and then go back on stage for that. It's the circle that just never ends. So,
Yeah, yeah. And to wrap this episode up, I wanted to ask you, for somebody who is newer to bodybuilding, or I mean, I guess anybody going through a reverse
mhm.
diet, what is one or two tips that you would give them, or even give yourself moving into a future reverse?
Yeah, that's a really good one. I would say stay off social media. Honestly, that's going to be the biggest thing because there are going to be people out there still giving advice on, what to do post show, how to deal with certain things, and you're just going to be getting this influx of information that might be throwing you off and also might make you feel like things are going wrong. I think the biggest thing that you can do is when you're going through this gap, you don't have to put this image up of, I'm still doing amazing, great, because the next person doesn't care at the end of the day what you're doing in your spare time. But I think the best thing that you can do is speak to your coach if things are happening, get it fixed, and get yourself off of Instagram, whatever it is that you usually post on or watch, because the more that you take time for yourself, the faster you can get things back aligned and have peace for your mind and body, because that's always what we want at the end result, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. How about
Yeah,
you?
that's a really good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And on that, shift your goals from being like focused on being lean to performance based. So, because you've just gone through a long phase of being solely focused on how shredded can I get.
Hmm.
So, shift your goals to then being performance based and focus on how you're performing physically in the gym. What's your output like? Are you hitting PRs? What's your strength like? But also, how are you feeling mentally? Like, how are you showing up in all aspects of your life? How's your energy and how's your sleep? Because those are going to be massive wins post show. Like, heck yeah, my sleep's improving. I'm sleeping 8 hours solid again without waking up. I'm hitting PRs again. My lifts feel freaking amazing. Those are all massive wins, and
Yeah.
that'll also help you shift away from being super food focused mentally. So
Find out how heavy you can lift. Okay.
yeah,
Find
it's
that
fun.
out.
Like post show lifts are the best, I swear
Oh
to
yeah.
God. But
Oh yeah. Getting your strength back, getting your personality back is the best thing. Oh my gosh. I had the personality of a damn potato for like 6 months. I was over it.
yeah,
So
yeah,
over it. But yeah.
yeah. One last tip I will give you too is like remember that food is always gonna be there.
Mhm.
Like that chocolate bar or that ice cream that you have sitting in your kitchen in your house, like it's always gonna be there.
Mhm.
Or that meal that you've been dreaming of at your favorite restaurant, it's always going to be there. It's not going anywhere. So you don't have to cram everything into your body
It
within the
was.
first month post show.
Yeah.
and definitely allow yourself like a free meal. I would say it's really important to have like a weekly untracked meal so that you can go satisfy whatever you're craving once a week and like allow your brain to switch off from tracking. But yeah, just remember that it's always going to be there. There's no rush to eat all of these foods. And in fact, it's going to taste better and feel better when you enjoy these foods in moderation versus slamming everything into your body like a garbage disposal.
She's right. She's right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, well, that was really good. I think a lot of people can benefit from, hearing this and normalize doing your own thing in your reverse. It's not an all size one size fits all. It's never that.
And if you're struggling, talk to people, reach out for support, like talk to other bodybuilders, talk to your coach, lean on your coach, lean on others because suffering through it and trying to navigate it on your own will only make it 10 times harder and 10 times worse.
And you never want that.
No. If you ever need support, both of us are always here as well. We've gone through this a million times.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, too many times actually. But, yeah. So let us know if you have any questions. We're always
Yeah.
happy to answer. And hopefully you guys
Thank you for tuning
enjoyed.
in to episode 3.
Hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode, and we will be back here next week like clockwork. So,
Same time next week.
bye guys.